anyone who's been paying attention and following me, or just been following this whole Sam Harris ordeal with the Young Turks, basically the regressive left, anyone who's been following this awakening, this new age of enlightenment, and I really think it should be considered, and I think it will go down in the history books as a new age of enlightenment, even if the broader world community is not aware of it yet. If my voice is a little bit grainy right now, it's because I'm just coming off of some sort of illness. So pardon my voice if it's a little ugh. One of the points that has been made repeatedly throughout this movement deals with Cenk Uygur. And I've been making this point a lot, and so have others. And some people have been very early to make this point. A man named, or I forget his real name, but his YouTube name is Johnversity. He has some great videos. I suggest that you go check them out. He has been critical of the Young Turks. And another man, Amir Spars, sorry if I butchered it, recently made a video that I think really fully encompasses the regressive left, their agenda. He really made it very clear what it was. Back to the point that deals with Cenk Uygur. Cenk Uygur, and I don't think for me there's any question, is anti-Semitic. Now that may come as a shock to some people, and for some others it may not be a shock at all. Sometimes it can be very, very subtle, and sometimes it's very overt if you've seen a lot of his previous videos. One of the things that I've noticed that many of these people who I believe are espousing some anti-Semitic views, one of the most common things that they will say is that criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic. And I would agree with them 100% on that point. However, there are three things we must observe in order to determine whether criticism of the State of Israel crosses the border into anti-Semitism. And these three things, it's called the triple D test. The first D is delegitimization. I'm not going to be saying these in order. I don't know if there is a proper order. But the first is delegitimization. This is when you delegitimize the State of Israel. And you basically say it had no right to be created, it has no right to exist. You deny the Jewish connection to the land, the historical, and this is secular, the historical, secular history of the Jewish people's connection to that land. That is the first D. The second D is double standards. Now, I really believe double standards, it's what really makes a bigot. When you hold someone to a different standard than you hold another person to, that is bigotry. That is a form of bigotry. So this also applies to the Jewish state, which is the only Jewish state. So the fact that people are super hypocritical of this state makes me a little bit suspicious. So double standards is how you can determine whether or not criticism of Israel does cross that line into anti-Semitism. The next is demonization. Now, this is when you make up outrageous lies about Israel. This is when you can use some very anti-Semitic tropes to describe the State of Israel, but it's okay because you're saying, oh, I'm not saying Jews, I'm saying Zionists, I'm saying Israel, such as blood libel. That's one of them. And in fact, that has a direct connection to the history of the Jewish people and the discrimination that we faced. People used to lie and say that Jews would kill Christian children and use their blood to make their matzahs during Passover. That is insane. It's meant to demonize the Jewish people, that we are the people of Satan, we are evil, and so that all falls under the umbrella of demonizing. I've observed all three on the Young Turks. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a series pointing out such examples. Specifically for this video, I'm going to be showing you an example of a double standard. Now, there's also a little bit of Jewish power conspiracy in this. Now, Cenk makes it very, very clear in this video he's not talking about the Jewish people. He's talking about Israel, and he doesn't want anyone to be anti-Semitic. He hates anti-Semitism, but it's true that the state of Israel, they kind of rule the world, according to him in this video. At least they control America. Automatically, to me, that sounds a little bit anti-Semitic. The idea that this tiny, tiny little state controls the entire world and that it gets away with it when almost every country hates it. It's pretty much, if it weren't for the US, it would be a pariah state. The idea that this one tiny, tiny little place controls the entire world seems ridiculous to me. Another thing that you must understand about Cenk Uygur is that he is an Armenian genocide denier. This has been proven multiple times. He still has not made it 100% crystal clear that he recognizes that the Armenian genocide did happen and that it was done by the Turks. And in fact, the Young Turks, their entire network is named after the group that committed the genocide. What you are going to see in this video is me, or not me. I'm going to let the video speak for itself. It is going to be very clear that some of Cenk Uygur's claims are not 100% accurate, and that there is a double standard between how he thinks of Israel and how he thinks of, let's just say, his own state. Enjoy.
A story that I think is most telling does not give credit to George W. Bush. In fact, it does the opposite, and it's regarding Israel as well. And that's the story that Ehud Olmert, the Prime Minister of Israel, tells. Olmert says that he called President Bush right before the UN was going to vote on a ceasefire. Now, the ceasefire was negotiated by Condoleezza Rice, the United States Secretary of State. And, of course, since she negotiated and she was the author of it and she pushed it through the UN, on the Security Council, she was going to vote yes, right? It's our plan. Ehud Olmert gets on the line, the Prime Minister of Israel, and says to Bush, hey, you know what? I don't like that. I'm not in favor of a ceasefire. I want to keep attacking and keep killing people in Gaza Strip.
By the way, that's what I meant by some of the blood libel there. Those bloodthirsty Israelis, just want to kill Palestinians for no reason when there's a perfectly reasonable solution on the table here. But no, they just want to go ahead and just kill those Palestinians.
Yeah, some are going to say justifiably, some are going to say unjustifiably, but that was his intention. I need more death.
See?
And so they said to him, I'm sorry, Prime Minister, but President Bush is literally in the middle of a speech in Philadelphia. He said, I don't give a damn what he's in the middle of. You get me President Bush on the line right now. And the U.S. bowed their heads, and they said, yes, sir, right away, sir. I forgot who I was talking to. Obviously, you're the boss. So I will go ahead and interrupt his speech. And they did. Bush stopped in the middle of his speech, took the call from Olmert, and Olmert said, that's it. You are not to allow your Secretary of State to vote for the resolution she authored. She has to abstain on it. And what did President Bush do? We're in charge, right? We're the most powerful country in the world. Apparently we're not. Apparently Israel is. No, he bowed his head and he said, I'm sorry, Mr. Prime Minister. Absolutely, sir. Right away, sir. I will stop Condoleezza Rice from doing that. And she had to walk in there absolutely embarrassed. She tried to convince everybody to go along with this resolution, and then in the end she comes and basically votes against her own resolution by abstaining. And people are like, what the hell? Why did you just talk to us for all this time to try to convince us that this ceasefire resolution was going to work, and then you come and vote against it? Why? Because we had to bow our heads. Israel's in charge. We're not in charge. Now, look, I've heard people say that many times, and I thought it was an exaggeration. I thought it was unfair. And I was worried about the source of those kind of comments. Because when you talk about, Israel, a Jewish state being in charge, etc., I'm worried about anti-Semitism. because people who sometimes are anti-Semitic will say things like that, like, oh, the Jews secretly run everything.
Sounds like some projection here.
And I'm worried about it, and that's why I wouldn't say it in the past. But here we have the Prime Minister of Israel telling us himself, absolutely, we're in charge. And George Bush is not the boss of me. I'm the boss of George Bush. I tell him when to stop making a speech. I tell him to get his ass on the phone. I tell him how to vote, and he does it. Secretary of State came up with a resolution. I don't give a damn. She'll vote against her own resolution. We're the boss. Well, I mean, the proof is in. Now, that doesn't mean anything about Jews, and I don't want people to make those kind of wrong assumptions, because that drives me crazy, okay? This isn't about that, all right? But when you're looking at the reality of who runs what, does Israel follow U.S. orders? Yes, to some degree, as the story I told you earlier. George Bush said you are not to bomb Iran, and they didn't do it, okay? But does the U.S. follow Israel's orders? Abso-frickin-lutely. If they say, hey, don't do this, the Bush doesn't do it. It's unbelievable. You think any other ally has that kind of power over the U.S.? Not even close. Imagine Turkey, second largest army in NATO. Huge, important ally in the Middle East for Turkey. Says, the Prime Minister of Turkey gets on the phone and says, hey, get Bush on the line. I don't give a damn what he's doing.
In America, in 1983, a feature film was made based on Franz Werfel's famous novel, which tells how some Armenian villagers heroically resisted the Turks until rescued by a French fleet. Originally, MGM planned to film the novel as early as 1934. The Turks immediately brought pressure to bear on the company and on the US State Department. They were successful. The film was dropped. The Turkish ambassador wrote a letter of congratulation to the State Department.
It is an agreeable duty for me to extend to you my hearty thanks and appreciation for the efforts you have been so kind to exert. You have created an excellent impression in Turkey.
The voices of Armenian Americans have been increasingly heard in recent years. They want their government to recognize the reality of the genocide and put pressure on Turkey to compensate the victims.
Justice means for the Turks to recognize what they did and to give some type of reparation, somewhat like the Germans did to the Jews during World War II. The world recognizes the Jewish genocide, but they have not looked at the Armenian genocide. If they looked at the Armenian genocide, there might never have been a Jewish genocide.
There is a saying among survivors that to have the genocide denied is to die twice. The key battleground is the United States, which welcomed so many survivors. If the genocide is ever to be recognized by the rest of the world, Armenians believe America must lead the way. Central to the Armenian case are America's own historical records. The documents sent by the American ambassador warning that Armenians were being exterminated.
What we're asking for is an affirmation of the historical record of the United States from that era that clearly records and substantiates the fact that a genocide was committed against the Armenian people. America owes it to itself to recognize its own record. The diplomatic files are so extensive and so thorough that we base our knowledge of the Armenian genocide in the main on what the American diplomats reported. And in this respect, affirming the Armenian genocide as a historical event is nothing more than recognizing one's own history, a piece of American history.
The Armenian Americans first realized that things weren't going their way when the White House stopped supporting them. Turkey had thrown its weight against the reality of history.
We told them that this was an absolutely unjust, inaccurate, and unfair resolution. No business of parliaments to pass a resolution like this.
The Turkish government's lobbying was nothing less than massive.
America does good business in Turkey, and the Turkish government left little doubt as to what would happen to that business if the Senate motion passed. Turkey's importance to NATO has been used by successive Turkish governments as a lever against the recognition of the genocide.
None of us, not one, is in a position to point the finger at Turkey and say that was a genocide. Yes, we killed some American Indians. It wasn't a genocide.
Mr. President, Hitler asked, when he was planning the final solution of the Jews, who remembers the Armenians? Let us prove Hitler wrong again, and by adoption of this resolution, remember the Armenian Genocide.
After years of campaigning, it looked as if the slaughter and deportation of the Armenians was at last going to be recognized as genocide by the legislators of the most powerful nation on earth. And then, with literally minutes left on the clock, something extraordinary happened.
The vote was coming up in the evening, and we were heading over with our staff to begin the debate, which would lead to this vote. And as we were walking up the steps of the Capitol, one of my staff members got a phone call from the Speaker's office.
That morning, the White House caved in to Turkish pressure. President Clinton called the House Speaker and asked him to withdraw the bill. Clinton's message to the Speaker was extraordinary. He cited grave national security concerns. He believed passing the resolution could endanger American lives.
By the time we got to the top of the stairs into the House chamber, they were already into other business.
And your genocide resolution was gone?
Never happened.
What was it, do you think, was said by the Turkish government to make him cite grave national security concerns?
Well, I don't really want to say that it was really what we have said. Of course we have said the same things.
National security, I think they also talked about American lives potentially being at risk.
That detail I do not remember, but certainly grave consequences or implications and security rights were there. But, you know...
so what do you think, what do you think it meant, grave national security concerns?
To me, if you really want my personal point of view, I think it was President Clinton's very good foresight and appreciation and evaluation of Turkey's position in the region and the value that they attach to our friendship and collaboration as a NATO ally.
The smarter countries and the smarter people in those countries realized cooperating with Turkey and achieving stability and balance in this region was really important for all of our mutual common good. Unfortunately, others with small petty concerns didn't realize this.
It's probably the defining issue of being Armenian, that we survived, that our families survived this genocide.
The last survivors are scattered far from their homeland. They know there's little likelihood the world will recognize the genocide while they're alive. What is left for them? Anger and bewilderment.
Sometimes I stay overnight and think why people do like the things like the way they did it. We didn't harm anybody. We built a country. We worked for them. I mean, we paid taxes. Why they did that to us?
I will wait for the day they acknowledge it. I pray for other governments to help us, nothing else. What else can I do? After I die, I will be finished, but I wait for that day. I will wait till I die to hear them say, yes, we did it.
Biz bunu yaptık desinler.
The campaign against the Armenians was the first in a century that would be defined by genocide. The very law on genocide was framed by a man who'd been profoundly affected by the tragedy of the Armenians. Raphael Lemkin believed genocide was a wound against all humanity. It is denial which ensures the wound can never heal.
Nobody has that kind of power outside of Israel.
So as you can see, Turkey has repeatedly prevented the US from doing what it wanted to do. It prevented our movie studios from making a movie about the genocide. It prevented George Bush from recognizing it. It prevented Clinton from recognizing it. It even prevented Obama from recognizing it because Obama, one of his campaign promises to the Armenian community was that he was going to recognize the genocide, but he did not. Can you assume why? I think we can assume why. Turkey. This all shows that many countries have great influence, even on the greatest of countries. Turkey, through their position in NATO, through their strategic alliance with the US, has prevented us from doing what is morally correct. It has prevented us from doing what we should be doing, which is recognizing the genocide of the Armenian people. Turkey has power over the US. Would you then claim this conspiracy of Turkish control of the United States government? Turkey has prevented much of the world from recognizing the Armenian genocide because of its strategic position. Would you then claim a conspiracy of Turkish control? I think you would not, because you have not. In fact, you repeatedly justify every action by Turkey, and I can prove this, and I will in my next video, that you do justify the actions of Turkey, even if they mirror or somewhat parallel the actions of Israel in any way. That is a double standard. Turkey stopped us, stopped our government from voting the way that it wanted to vote. Acknowledge that.
The twin facts of the genocide and their survival of it are of immense psychological importance to the Armenians, as indeed is the Holocaust to the Jews.
Ուզեց քեզ այս դեպքը։ Շատ ուզեց կնաս մոտնալ ապրի 24-ը։ Ինչու համար։
Քանի որ հայերուն չարթն է եւ մենք ալ հայենք եւ չենք կնալ մոռնալ։
Այո, չենք կնալ մոռնալ։ Բայց թուրքերը հաջողեցան իրենց նպատակը հաջողեցին։
Այո,
ինչ ձևով հաջողեցին։
Ամեն մեղցնելով եւ թանակներ առնելով խոանոցներեն։
Այո, հաջողեցին, բայց իրենց նպատակը ինչ էր։
Ամեն Հայաստանը առնել։ Եվ մեկ հատ բաց մտքեր, որքան
թանկարանի մեջ։ Այդպես եղավ։ Ոչ։ Ինչ են գիտես, որ այդպես չեղավ։ Այո, ալա։
Որովհետև մենք խոսենք
եւ ներկայություն արդեն փաստ մնե, որ իրենց ուսածը ինչ են գիտենք, որ իրենց ուսածը չեղավ, հաշիվը սխալել է։
Որովհետև մենք խոսենք
այո, ասենք, ուրիշ
եւ ամեն Հայաստանը չգրցան առնել։
Ապրիս ունինք նորեն բզդիկ կդորմը Հայաստան կոնե բզդիկ հողմը դու գարցես որ այդ բզդիկ հողը օրմը պիտի մեծնա
այո որովհետև եւ որ մեծնանք մենք գերտանք առնել
դուք երբ որ մեծնաք հայկական թադը պիտի չմոռնաք այո եւ պիտի երտանք առնելու բռնակրամված հողերը պիտի ընդարձակվի պիտի մեծնա մեր հայրենիքը ուրեմն դու այդ երազը ունիս այդ երազով ալ պիտի մեծնաս պիտի չմոռնաս
Now, a while back, Anna tweeted something that really disturbed me because I felt like it was just so untrue. Anna tweeted that this was when many people on Twitter were angry at Cenk because he does not recognize the Armenian Genocide, and people should be angry about that. Anna, in his defense, that to me is very disturbing. In his defense, she tweeted that none of us who were expressing our disdain towards him actually cared about her people. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, when I was watching these documentaries, and maybe I shouldn't be getting this personal, I mean, I don't want to appear to be a weak human being, but I actually, cried. Because the Armenian Genocide was kind of like the test run. The Armenian Genocide was a prerequisite to the genocide of the Jews, the Holocaust. When I hear these people speak, when I'm seeing this teacher talk to her students about what happened to their people, it's like I'm back in Hebrew school again. Usually Hebrew school is kind of like, oh, you're going to Hebrew school. I don't know, it's a funny thing. It's not usually so dark. People don't think of it as a dark thing, but you learn a lot. There's a lot of horror. And knowing it happened to you, to your people, that people want you dead because of your identity, I don't think people can understand that unless their people have been through a genocide. So, I mean, to a certain point. When I was watching the part where this teacher is talking to her students, it's like we can never forget, saying we can never forget that this is what happened. Imagine how much worse it would be for the Jews if the world did not recognize that the Holocaust had happened. Just imagine how much worse it would have been, how much more of an insult. The fact that the Armenians have not seen justice. It's a gross statement on humanity. It is a crime against humanity. And I do believe that my identity puts me in a position where I can feel it just a little bit more. And that's not to say that people who are not Jewish or who are not Armenian don't understand. And that's not to say that at all. I think it just opens the door a little more so that I'm more compelled to. I think that's a fair thing to say. I don't want to prejudge anyone. I would never work for a Holocaust denier on a show named The Third Reich. But Anna has sold a part of her soul. It's like watching, for me, a Jew do exactly what I said that I would never do. Honestly, that's how I see it. I can't see it any other way. It is so perverted. It is so messed up. And if she's really betraying her people. I mean, maybe I don't have a right to say that because I'm not Armenian, but if the situation was such as I expressed before, to me that would be a betrayal. I don't know how to better express that. When I'm watching these kids in the classroom, it's like, oh my God, these are mishpucha. They're my people. They understand. They really understand. And I don't think Cenk Uygur understands just how insulting it is. When I encounter people on the internet who deny that the Holocaust happened. Or they say, oh, it was exaggerated, only 100,000 Jews died. Oh, only 10,000 Jews died. It's really insulting. I mean, I know that these are just people on the internet. You're not supposed to take it seriously. But there are real people. This is like what Sargon said. There are real people behind these screens who have feelings, who do care. I can't believe that Anna works for a man who just does not recognize it. It's so disturbing to me. To me, Anna has sold herself so that she can sit comfortably in a high place, where she can continue to parade around, having fun with her friends, feeling like a good person because she speaks out against social injustices. Yet, she's forgotten about the justice that she deserves, that her people deserve. She's forgotten about their justice and that they haven't received it yet. So, for her to tell me that I don't actually care about her people, for her to be so presumptuous as to assume that, when she is working for a Holocaust denier, not my Holocaust, but her Holocaust, she has no right, because I do care. And maybe I care too much, but I do care. And it does bother me. It disturbs me. You have every right to work there, Anna, but you know you're a whore for it. You're whoring yourself out and against your people. Maybe that's a bit aggressive, maybe that's a bit harsh, and maybe my words will come back later to haunt me. Why do you stay there? Do you like the social benefits? Do you like your paycheck? Do you like never having to grow up and live in the real world? Cenk is using you. It is beyond obvious. You are there so that no one can say that he hates Armenians. You are there so that he can say, look, why is she working here if I'm such a bad person? Why do I have someone who's Armenian right here next to me? It's the same tactic that they use for Jews. Oh, see, like, you can't call me anti-Semitic. I have Jews around me. I have Jewish friends. It's the same thing, like when you guys criticize Republicans because sometimes they say, I'm not racist, I have that black friend. It's usury. He uses the Jewish people and he's using you. I know you're in such a state of denial, but you have to realize that it is not acceptable for someone to deny the Holocaust of your people when it so clearly happened. It so clearly happened. The evidence is overwhelming, and the people who are watching this video just watched the evidence. They know. We all know it happened. So why don't you get out of this place of security? Why don't you be brave and tell your boss that he better recognize the Armenian Genocide? That he doesn't have a right to be considered a progressive when he is in such a state of denial about what his people did to your people. Now, do I believe that he is responsible for what the people he's descendant from did in the past? No. I don't hold the modern-day Germans accountable for what was done to the Jews during the Holocaust. Germany has acknowledged it. They have apologized for it. They care, and they are deeply, deeply ashamed. But they acknowledged what they did. They've owned up to it. And it's created a beautiful country. But they've owned up to it. And the Jewish people are better off for the fact that they recognize what they did. The Armenian people, anyone who was there, who survived, it's been 100 years. I mean, they're not here anymore. They're not ever going to see justice done the way the Jewish people did. In that sense, I feel lucky, because I can't imagine how much worse it would have been for the survivors of the Holocaust if Germany did not recognize it. In that way, we are lucky. Unfortunately, your people have yet to see justice, and you work for a man who would have your people never see justice. Really think about that, and then tell me that I don't care about your people.